Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Thursday, nearly at the weekend. I hope the week is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. We now know the final knockout games in the Euros. England going to be taking on Slovakia on Sunday. Some other juicy games as well. Not least, get my words out properly. Not least that game between France and Belgium. Saliba versus Trossard should be an absolute cracker. We will talk a little bit about the Euros later on in this show. Got lots of reaction from you guys in terms of what we were talking about yesterday with Bukayo Saka. Also got loads of reaction from you on Eddie Nketiah and his potential price tag this summer. So I've pulled a few of those together and got them included in the show, but it's loads of reactions. If you want to go back to yesterday's video, and look through the comments, you'll see a whole host of you talking about very different opinions when it comes to Eddie Nketiah. We're going to talk about Thomas Partey's future. Lots of reports doing the rounds in the last 24 hours or so about him, Emile Rowe as well. So plenty to discuss. And we'll start with Thomas Partey, shall we, who's been, pretty much talked about since the end of the season when it comes to his potential future. Lots of reports doing the rounds now about Saudi stepping up their interest in Thomas Partey, and that PIFA, which is obviously the private investment fund of Saudi, who own sort of top four clubs in the Saudi league, are talking with him, trying to sort of sound out his potential interest, looking at which of the clubs, the PIF-owned clubs, he would potentially be interested in joining before then approaching Arsenal. And that is the way that PIF usually do their business when it comes to bringing players over to Saudi. They speak to them and their representatives, of course, and get the sort of sound them out and work out if they are up for it, pretty much agree a contract before then approaching the club. And as far as I'm aware, there hasn't yet been any talks between Arsenal and PIF in terms of Thomas Partey. But as I reported a couple of weeks ago, there have been discussions going on behind the scenes when it comes to a potential move this summer. I've had my say on it in terms of what I would do with Thomas this summer. I think it would need to be a decent chunk of money to tempt me, and this is just my opinion, tempt me into doing business when it comes to Thomas. Yes, he's got his injury issues. We know that. Yes, he's only got a year left in his contract. Yes, he's a big earner at Arsenal. But I still feel unless you get a real decent chunk of money, you just think, why don't you just keep him for another year? And then let him go on a free at the end of the season. I don't think he's ever going to get a new contract at Arsenal. So I think whatever happens, we're coming to the end of Thomas Partey's time at Arsenal, whether it be this summer or 12 months down the line when he goes on a free. But I still think he's got so much to give. Yes, you have to cross your fingers and hope that he's going to be injury free, but you would hope there's no international tournament for him this summer. He had a couple of games at the start with Ghana, but he's had a proper summer off. You'd hope he'd be fully rested. And if he can come back, have a decent pre-season and be ready to go next season, then you can still get a real decent 12 months out of him before then him moving on. And if you sell Thomas Partey, then we know Arsenal are looking for a midfielder anyway, but if you sell Thomas Partey, you pretty much need two, I would say, this summer. And so you just have to look at it and think, is it really worth? Unless Saudi are coming in and offering, I don't know, for his age, his wages, 30 million, something like that. You just think, is it really worth it for 10 million, which is probably going to be more realistic in terms of what they're going to end up offering? I'm just not sure. But I think what's going to happen with Thomas is going to start to accelerate, I'd imagine, over the next few weeks. He isn't yet back, but he is going over to Marbella, as far as I'm aware, to join up with that training camp, which is ongoing at the moment, which you've got the sort of 6 players who have started it off, but then Partey's going to join with Martin Odegaard and Gabriel Jesus in the next few days or so. And yeah, I do think talks will accelerate in the next few weeks when it comes to resolving his future. But I'm just a little bit on the fence. I think he's got an awful lot to offer. I think Arsenal clearly need to add to their midfield already this summer. And if you're letting Thomas go for a pretty small fee, then it's just, what's the point? Because you're weakening your midfield options ahead of what's going to be another huge season for Arsenal. So it needs to be a tempting offer. If it is, I can understand from a business point of view why you would do it. But I do think you have to then go on and bring in not just one decent, top quality midfielder this summer. You need to go and buy 2. And when you've got other areas of the squad that you need to strengthen and need to focus on, that isn't really the most ideal situation. But let me know your thoughts on it all, please, in the comments below. As usual, what would you be doing with Thomas Partey if, as expected, PIF do end up approaching Arsenal and saying, right, here's, I don't know, whatever chunk of money on the table for Thomas. Will you accept it? Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Now, there's also lots of talk at the moment about Smith Rowe and talks, being initiated between interested clubs and Arsenal for Emile. I'm not sure. I mean, I can't obviously wouldn't deny that, but I haven't heard that's the case. In fact, I've heard that that's not quite at the case at that stage yet, but it's very close to getting to that stage. I think there's obviously discussions going on with clubs and representatives and things like that in terms of sounding out exactly where he might want to go, where he could go, and what the deal is with Arsenal. And then when that's all sorted, then the official sort of talks and the what you would expect will be bids will follow. Now, Arsenal said to be wanting around 40 million for Emile Smith Rowe, and Fulham and Palace are the two clubs at the moment which are said to be leading the race. Now, I spoke about Smith Rowe yesterday. I said something it wouldn't surprise me in the next sort of week or so that things really start to move on when it comes to Emile. We might start hearing, more when it comes to actual bids going in. I think we're close to it. As far as I'm aware, I don't think yet we're at the stage where anyone has actually properly gone to Arsenal and been like this is what we're offering. Will you sell? But I do think we're probably getting towards that stage when it comes to Emile. Again, he's over in Marbella at the moment doing a lot of really good fitness work with him and Nketiah and Ben White. This sort of thing Smith Rowe does every single summer. He normally goes out there on his own and does it with a fitness coach and a couple of other players. Obviously, this is a little bit different this time. Arsenal have decided to sort of get on board with that and gone over and done their own thing. And apparently it's going very, very well. And everyone's fit, everyone's healthy, and everyone's looking forward to the new season. Whether that be with Arsenal when it comes to Smith Rowe and potentially a couple other faces over there, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm not sure we're at that stage yet where Arsenal have actually, in fact, Arsenal haven't received bids, I don't think, when it comes to Smith Rowe, but I don't think we're very far off that stage at the moment. Okay, in terms of international action from yesterday, Belgium versus Ukraine. So we had Trossard versus Zinchenko, although Zinchenko only started on the bench. He did come on in the second half. It was a dreadful game. Really, really awful, awful game. Belgium got through, got booed off by their own fans at the end of it. Ukraine got applauded off by their own fans at the end of it, but went out, unfortunately. Finished with 4 points, Ukraine, and went out. First time since the new format of the Euros that a team has ever finished with 4 points and got out. And when you look at some of the other third best placed teams in other leagues have gone through on 3 points, you do think that is very harsh. I thought Ukraine actually played well yesterday and had the better chances. I thought Belgium were awful. I thought Trossard had an absolute shocker. Just didn't really do anything at all. He's not had a good tournament, Leo. There's games when you watch Leo and he struggles for, get many touches on the ball, that sort of stuff. But then he'll pop up with a really important goal. We've seen that time and time again with Arsenal in the last sort of season or so, but it's just not happening for him at the moment in front of goal. He's not really getting into a position where he can threaten. And I didn't think he had the best of games yesterday, Leo. And for Zinchenko, I'm sure he'll be disappointed to start that game on the bench for Zinchenko. He did come on, but couldn't help Ukraine find what would have been that all-important goal. Okay, lots of reaction for what we were talking about yesterday. We'll start with Eddie Nketiah, shall we, and the 50 million price tag. And a few of you against it. I was saying, I think it might be a little bit unrealistic. I can see why that is the price tag maybe that's been put out there, because as you all know, if you're in a bargaining position, if you're trying to sell your house, you put it at the very highest price possible, or even above what you're asking for, because you would hope that then what you eventually get is more sort of realistic to what you actually want. Ray has got in touch. Says, I do sometimes wonder how good Eddie could be if we persisted with him like Havertz and others. I think he will shine leading the line for another Premier League club, and hope he can damage some of our rivals next season if he stays in the Prem. I do think Eddie has had a lot of chances for Arsenal. I don't think if Eddie ends up going this summer, you can look back on it and think he wasn't given ample opportunities by Arsenal. He's been played lots of football. He got lots of appearances. He scored plenty of goals. I think he can look back on his time at Arsenal really, really positive if he does end up going. Matthew says, hi, Charles. Great content as always. I also enjoyed your book. Thank you very much, Matthew. Paperback version with the updated chapter on last season is coming very, very soon. Next month, I think that hits the shelves. So keep your eyes peeled. If you haven't picked up the hardback version, then the paperback is coming very, very soon. And Matthew says, Eddie Nketiah, yes, 50 million may seem too much, but we can't criticise Arsenal for being bad sellers and then laugh at them for asking for high fees for Eddie, ESR, and Nelson. We might not get what we asked for, but I am happy Arsenal have finally started to demand high transfer fees for those players who could improve most other teams, especially when you see Chelsea selling players of lesser quality for ridiculous fees. Yeah, and Chelsea just make me laugh. Honestly, every single time I open my timeline on Twitter or something and I sort of scroll down, it doesn't take many tweets before I see the first one saying Chelsea have initiated talks with so-and-so player. It's just like every single player in the world they seem to be talking to, trying to sign. And Gab says, definitely not a step too high, Charles. You place a 30 million price tag on Eddie, we probably end up getting 20 million max for him, after which there'll be a meltdown for selling him cheap. PS Villa sold their academy player for 19 million. Yes, they did. But let's face it, that is not a normal transfer. Absolutely not a normal transfer. What happened with Villa and Chelsea there? That is well, I mean, it's just not a normal transfer. He's not worth anything like that. That was just purely a PSR transfer, no doubt about it. And he's not worth 90 million. No other club buys that player for that amount of money. It's not a normal transfer. It's plain and simple. Everyone knows what that transfer was about. And it's really, really shady and not a good look for football. And it's a loophole that the PSR clubs are exploiting right now. So, yeah, I don't think you can base that deal on actual proper transfers that are happening this summer, because that one is definitely not a proper transfer. Okay, in terms of Saka and England now, Matt says, watching Saka play for England, as with the latter Arsenal games this season, I'm reminded of Theo and how his game was frustrated. He's receiving his ball with a back to goal and struggles to turn with the wing back and left centre back ready for him. Mostly pushes it back, and although it moves the team up the pitch, he's wasted there. I do look at him at the moment and think, if Ben White was playing for England, how much better Saka would be at the moment. He is having to really, really hug that touchline, and you know what Saka's going to do. He can go on the outside. We see it time and time again. He does go on the outside, but he likes moving inside and getting on that left foot as well. But when you haven't got a fullback who's really doing the overlap, and for all of Walker's pace, there's not too many times you've really seen him get on the overlap and get down that right wing. A couple of times he has done. Of course, it's the one time when it led to Kane's goal in the second game. But more often than not, it's not. And that Saka's been a bit isolated out there on the right-hand side. Andrew says Saka at left-back makes more sense than playing Tripper at left-back. That is true, but I still don't really vouch. I'm still not buying this whole Saka at left-back thing. At left wing, by all means. Left-back, though, I mean, come on. There's a serious issue if you're moving Bukayo Saka to left-back. He's a right winger at the moment, and he can play left wing very, very well. But left-back, I mean, no. That is just square peg and round holes. And as soon as you come up against a decent team, you're going to get exploited doing that, because as good as Saka is, he is not a left back anymore. And good teams with proper right wingers will take full advantage of him playing there. So it does maybe make more sense than Trippier playing there, because it does give you that natural left-sided balance. But I would much rather see, if he's going to be shifted out to the left, then shift him out and play him on the left-hand side of the attack, not at left back. Scott says, hey, Charles, how do you feel about England going to a back three with Trent and Saka as the wing backs? And then you could play Watkins with Kane, Foden behind them, and Jude and Deck as the eights. Trips and Walker just don't have the legs for a full tournament, so I can see Saka taking one for the team. It was a crazy decision to bring an injured Luke Shaw as the only left-back option. Yes, it absolutely was a crazy option. Yeah, I mean, look, Saka at left wing-back is better than at left-back, 100%. But I just don't see Southgate ripping up the formation and the system. I think he'll probably make a couple of changes for this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Saka ends up on the bench and Cole Palmer comes in on the right, and maybe Gordon goes over on the left. But I don't see him changing the system completely halfway through the tournament. I'd be really surprised if he does. For me, it's just a step too far for Gareth Southgate to do something that drastic. I wouldn't be against it by any means, but I just can't see Southgate doing that at this point. I think he needs to make changes. I think he will make changes. I'm not sure it's going to involve the system, though. I think it'll be more stick with the same formation and a couple of personnel changes. Virup here says, look at the draw. Southgate is blessed, or done a deal with the devil. He can get to the semi-finals most times without meeting a big team in any form. I mean, that's right, but I don't think the draw matters in this case, because I still think England are going to go out as soon as they come up against a half-decent team. And look, I think they could lose to Slovakia. I absolutely do think they could lose to Slovakia. Yes, when you look at it on paper, the draw looks easier for England, but it doesn't matter when you're playing as bad as England are at the moment. Then it doesn't really matter. In the next round, if they get through Slovakia, which I still think is a big if at the moment, unless Southgate does what needs to be done and really shake things up, which I don't think he will. Even if they get themselves past Slovakia in a scrappy sort of 1-0 type of game, they come up against Italy or Switzerland and in the next round. And I don't see any way they get through either of those teams. I think Switzerland beat Italy, in my opinion, and I think they definitely beat England. And even if Italy get past Switzerland again, I think they'll be too much for England. I have no confidence, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope England suddenly click into life. And I have seen tournaments, Euro '96. They weren't great initially, the first couple of games. Going back to Italia '90, England were pretty awful until the Germany semi-final. They scraped through the group stages. This was the first World Cup I ever watched. They beat Belgium, who outplayed them for 120 minutes, and then David Platt scored that brilliant goal right at the end. Cameroon were far better than them in the quarterfinals and just needed 2 Gary Lineker penalties to sort of turn that round. So they weren't great at that tournament, but they got themselves through. So they might do that again. They might do it. You never know. Hopefully they do, but I'm not confident, to be honest, even in this supposed easier side of the draw that they are now in. Here's one from Paul. Says, hi, Charles. Did you read the reports coming out of France that Saliba was tested for anti-doping control? He's that good that they have to drug test him. Yeah, I did see his report. It's nothing new. Every single player, every single game after games, a couple of players are randomly selected for doping. Saliba was obviously tested. This time he got left behind because the France squad left and he hadn't finished his doping, so he had to make his own way home or back to the hotel. That happens a lot. Honestly, the amount of times I've been down in the mix zone after games waiting for players to interview them, and the player that we're waiting to interview has been selected for doping, and we can end up waiting there for an hour and a half because these players are pretty dehydrated after games. And when you're waiting to give a sample for doping and you're really dehydrated, it is not very easy. And sometimes they have to wait and wait and wait and wait. And that's what happened, obviously, to Saliba at the game after France's game. And it's happened loads of times where we have literally been the last people in the stadium because the player we've been waiting to interview have been stuck waiting to give a doping sample that he just can't give because he's too dehydrated. So it happens a lot. And yeah, I did see that, Paul. So thank you very much for the comment. And here's one from Sam who says, long time listener here. Question for you and for James Benge. Unfortunately, there's no Inside Arsenal extra time this week because James Benge right now is making his way to Glastonbury, pitching his tent, and he's going to be enjoying the sunshine for once at Glastonbury over the next few days. So we're not going to have time to record anything, obviously, this week. But I will answer this question. It says, if you could choose one Arsenal player to score the winning goal in the last minute of a Champions League final, who would it be? I presume you're not going back over history and asking me any sort of Arsenal player at any time. I presume you mean from this current squad. And for me, I think that'd be a pretty easy answer. It would be Bukayo Saka. For me, Saka is the symbol of this new look Arsenal that has emerged under Mikel Arteta. He's just the best representation of Arsenal that there possibly is right now. Just an amazing person, brilliant footballer. As I said, this kind of symbol of what this new, young, energetic Arsenal that has emerged. And yeah, nothing would please me more than Bukayo Saka having this huge sort of moment to either be the guy who scores the winning goal to win in the league or, wins them the Champions League with a last minute goal. So look, I'd take anyone because it'd be an unbelievable moment. But if I could choose one player of this current squad, it would have to be for me, Bukayo Saka. So yeah, thank you very much for that one, Sam. And thank you everyone for getting in touch for today's show. Appreciate your time as always. There is a slight chance, again, I have to say that I might not be able to do a show tomorrow. It's my kids' sports day first thing in the morning. I'm not going to be able to do one during the morning. I'm hoping there's going to be enough stuff for me to talk about that has happened during the day today that I can pre-record something tonight that I can still get a show out for you in the morning tomorrow. But if not, if there is nothing tomorrow morning and you're waiting for me and there's no show, that is why I'm at my kids' sports day. And look, I can't be missing that. I've got to be there for my kids' sports day. So yeah, apologies in advance if I don't get a show done tomorrow, but I will try nonetheless. But so until then, everyone have a fantastic day. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.